And welcome. Good morning to the morning show. It is that time, early, 8 o'clock in the morning. It's a Saturday, and you know what time it is? It's the ASSITEJ South Africa morning catch up. And you know that I always have the best people with me. In today's episode, we do have Scout Fynn, who's going to be talking to us all about her work that she's doing and also the upcoming performances that she's going to be doing in Durban. Good morning, Scout, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Finally, thank you so much for, availing yourself. And also, thank you so much for coming to the morning show. Scouts, we definitely want to get into it and just want to ask you, please tell our audience, who is Scout Fynn?
That's such a daunting question. I don't know why, but whenever I get asked that question, I'm like, oh damn, who is Scout Fynn? Who Scout Fynn is changes from day to day, but for the purposes of this conversation, so Scout Fynn is an interdisciplinary artist. I'm a playwright and theatre maker and performer, but I also work in curation specifically for virtual spaces. I've done a lot of work sort of blending digital art and sound and trying to transform virtual spaces as a curator. I've worked for the Voices of Women Museum for about 3 years doing that and curated two of their virtual annual exhibitions. But I've also written plays, and I was a finalist for the Distell National Playwriting Competition in 2022. And I really am interested in the integration of multiplicity and different uh, interdisciplinary methods and ways of creating.
Amazing. Scout, I think your volume is a bit soft. I don't know if you mind just coming closer to the microphone. Or maybe I think you have your headsets on.
It
Because we
might be.
we
Is
we
this is
are
this better?
yes, much better. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
No worries. Thank you for that heads up.
No, I think we definitely, want to know more about you and the fact that you are a graduate, or you were a graduate at the Market Theatre Laboratory. Tell us more about that phase of your life. Why I'm asking you this is because we have so many young people who are watching, who are listening, and they just want to know, how did Scout get to where she is from the Market Theatre to then winning all of these awards and finally creating her own work. Tell us about that journey when you were at the Market Theatre.
Yeah. So I auditioned for the Market Theatre Lab in 2018 and was very lucky to get the opportunity to be a part of the first year class for 2019. And I was there for the full 2 year program. So I graduated at the end of 2020. And that was kind of in the midst of the pandemic. So I think for our class in particular, we had a very sort of interesting hybrid experience of what it meant to study performance at that time, particularly in the context of the Market Theatre Lab, because it's a school that's so focused on, practicality and also ensemble. And so that was really interesting to, yeah, try and negotiate those things when we were still students, trying to complete our education during the lockdown. But it also, I think, when I look back on it, gave me a lot of, I think, starting points for how I sometimes like to approach work now. And I think definitely graduating during a pandemic and then being, a young professional during a pandemic where everyone is trying to figure out how to make live theater or live performance work in virtual spaces, in digital spaces, within the digital era. I thought that was really, it was challenging at first, to be sure, but I think it also gave me a lot of very interesting points of entry into how to use other methods, other tools of creation to craft experiences, to craft shared experiences, to engage audiences, but also how to play with like the virtual and digital space, which I think very much informed my curatorial work. But the being a lab rat, being part of the one of the classes at the Market Theatre lab was really, I think, a seminal growing point for me as an artist because we were exposed to so much. We were encouraged to really like dive deep into the craft of theatre and the craft of creating performance. And it was incredibly rigorous, but also joyous. We had so much freedom to like experiment and play.
Mm,
And I think that that's something that's really important when you're first starting out is that, yes, there are, there's methods of doing something, and there's definitely, more academic study and theoretical study that you can take into account.
mhm,
But I think when you're young and you're trying to figure out who you are as an artist and find your voice, it's really important to play and it's really important to experiment and to also not necessarily take yourself so seriously within those processes. So I think that definitely it gave me a lot of like really great foundational support in that sense because
mm,
I was less afraid of moving into processes or, trying to create work from a space of unknowing or a
mm,
space of not knowing. And I think that that can be really exciting, especially when you are trying to make something that is your own work, right? When you're not adapting something. And it's an important journey that I think a lot of us as young artists have to kind of figure out who we are and find our voice through our work. And for me, I think it's one of the most important ways to do that.
exactly, and I think now we're now maybe moving into, even more into the work that you are doing. As I said, South Africa, they are really focused on creating work for children, or with children in mind. And so, how then do you think your work kind of ties in, the importance of having children to have access to theater? To know more about theater, to participate in theater. How does your work then involve, children, if it does?
Yeah. I think having theatrical experiences that children can also engage with is something that I feel is really important to me. Um, I don't necessarily categorize this particular work as a work that is specifically for children, but it is a piece that is aimed at a generational demographic because the scope of the characters and the themes that we're discussing are relevant, I think, no matter your age. And also because we're dealing with topics like identity and what it means to go through an identity crisis. I think at any sort of given milestone in your life, those are points that we can all relate to. And I think that there are themes and topics of exploration within this piece that are also that would speak to experiences that young children are having now. But very much the intent for this piece was to also be like, how can we create a theatre piece that's not just geared specifically for children and youth? Because I also think that there's sometimes, stigmas attached to those things. If it's just a theater piece for youth or a theater piece for children, then it's like, oh, well, it's only really meant for children to kind of, yeah, get a sense of, yeah, it's more geared towards them and it's not really for anyone of any other age. And I think I'm really interested in intergenerational conversations. And it's a big theme in this piece too, because we're dealing with a mother, a father, and their child. And those archetypes I feel like are universal. And whether you're a child, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teenager, whether you're a young person, I think we can all find points of connection within those archetypes. And I think as somebody who definitely grew up in the theater, one of my parents is a theater performer, my grandmother is a theater performer and writer. And so I was always kind of around in and around theaters. And that kind of gave me so much to relate to in terms of the stories that I was seeing represented on stage. But it also like broadened my imagination for, what's possible. And it gave me incredible entry points into grappling with complex themes and complex stories, which is what I think the power of theatre is. It's such a shared experience between performer and audience, and it really has the potential to open new worlds and new doors for everyone, but specifically for children. I think it can be really impactful when they're able to be exposed to performance and to theatre from a young age.
Mm. I totally agree. I totally agree. And you've touched on, the work that you're doing. The production is called Inheritance. Am I correct?
Yes.
Inheritance.
Inheritance, inheritance. Yes.
Inheritance. And the short synopsis is Inheritance explores the identity crisis of the girl child through her relationship with her hair. So after an incident leaves her questioning her identity, she embarks on a quest for understanding, challenging her parents and their conflicting perspectives on identity in her pursuit of acceptance. Now, maybe Scout, tell us more about the inspiration behind, your production. Where did it come from? And maybe you can even go further and tell us what is the intention behind this work.
So the inspiration for the piece, it's funny that you asked me about the market theatre because I started to write it towards the end of my second year, which was my final year at the lab. And it sort of came out of a very real identity crisis that I was having myself. And I think part of it had to do with the fact that I was living in a new city where I didn't know anyone and I didn't have any family. And so I had all the space to kind of question my sense of self. And there were various things that kept coming up that have always come up throughout my life, and sort of questions around, my racial identity or my ethnicity. And I was struggling to find the words for how to contextualize that experience. And I also felt quite isolated in that experience. I didn't know how, I didn't think there was anyone else who was potentially, yeah, going through the same thing as me. And so I kind of used writing a piece about it to try and unpack it and understand it for myself, because I was really, yeah, I didn't have the words for it. I was confused. But I had this drive and this need to kind of come up with these answers. And I think that stemmed from a theme in my life where I've always kind of felt that I've needed to, yeah, qualify my identity. And so then over the last 4 years, I've been developing this piece. I, interviewed friends and family and anybody I could, and kind of wanted to get into, yeah, our relationship to identity as South Africans and how that intersects with hair, particularly in our South African context when we think about, the pencil test and how that was used to kind of, yeah, segregate people, and also as an identity marker, which is a really crazy and insane, yeah, white supremacist bureaucratic process that still has real life and real time repercussions. And so something that would happen to me a lot when I was younger was people would look at my hair and then they would look at like my skin or my face and they'd be like, okay, so what are you? And I never really knew how to answer that question. And as I kind of grew up and would ask, parents or family members about, what are we, what's our identity, I always got very different answers and very different responses. And I always, whenever I would give those responses, I always got very mixed feedback from the people who would ask me. And it was clear that people wanted me to fit into like a very specific box. And so with this piece, I think a lot of the things that we are exploring or challenging through this experience that the girl child is having is ideas around identity in the South African context, what it means to be a person of color, what it means to be black, what it means to be brown, what it means to be, quote unquote, mixed, how we continue to perpetuate, systemic remnants of apartheid, like the pencil test. Um, in and how has that changed? In what ways do those kind of questions pop up now? And then also about our relationship to hair and how certain textures are seen as better than others, and the ideas of like colorism and how that is still perpetuated in a lot of communities with people of color. And when you are fairer, you're seen as being more beautiful or having more worth than when you're darker. And what do those conversations look like when we start having them amongst ourselves, with our family members? So I really wanted to explore all of that and have a context that felt relatable and universal, which was looking at it from the perspective of a mother, a father, and their child. Um, and there's something interesting about that trinity where I felt like there were multiple ways and layers of exploring all of these different themes, and it really is an exploration. We're not presenting any answers with the piece, but we're inviting people to ask themselves the same questions that the characters are, because I feel like it's still very much, the unpacking and unlearning and unstoring of a lot of families and a lot of people who are grappling with issues of identity, and part of what comes from living in a racialized society.
Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. It sounds absolutely amazing. And where can people watch this production and when can we watch it?
So we are opening on the 6th of March in Durban at the Books Theatre, which is a wonderful, small, intimate theatre at the Durban High School in Musgrave. And we're really excited to debut this work. As I said before, it's an experimental piece. And so we really are trying to experiment with each of the themes through different methodologies. We're looking at sound, we're looking at visual representations, we were going to have projection art, we're looking at movement, and it's going to be something that I think is really, really interesting for audiences to engage with, and something that we're really interested in engaging with audiences about. We really want to be able to use the piece as a way to kind of open up these conversations, and really like have back and forths with people about, their own kind of, ideas around identity, and some of the more, I think specific and deeper points of the piece.
Oh, fantastic. So all of you in Durban, you have to come and watch this amazing, amazing production. It's happening during the um, Take a Child to the Theatre campaign happening with and in partnership with ASSITEJ South Africa. And the importance of Take a Child to the Theatre is to have access to theatre, for children to have access to the theatre, to watch a play, to know more about what does a production really entail, what is the message that all of these directors are trying to teach, educate, and also uplift young children. So it's definitely worth it. And how then, Scout, as we close, do we find you on social media?
So you can find our production page on Instagram. It's inheritance.production. You can also find me on Instagram at scout_fin. And we've already shared like quite a few sort of insights into who our creative team is, and some insights into the piece as well. We're going to be sharing more and more content as we get closer to our opening date. But yeah, I would just encourage people to definitely, number one, bring children to the performance. This performance is suitable for all ages. And I would encourage parents to come and watch the show with their kids, because that is very much that dynamic is part of the experience and part of the story. And I think it would be a really impactful and important show for, parents and kids to come and watch together.
As well. And please, maybe let us know about school bookings. Do we have school bookings?
Yes.
Is it available? And also, how do we get the tickets?
Absolutely. So we will be having school bookings. That's something that we are very much invested in. We will be engaging with all of the local schools in Durban, and inviting them to also come and book shows because we do feel like the performance is, yeah, would be something that would be really interesting and topical for their students to engage with. We are going to be opening for booking soon, and you can book tickets on either web tickets or you will be able to contact one of our team members directly. But we will also be selling tickets at the door for performances that aren't closed. So those are performances where we haven't booked for schools. But if there are any schools who are interested, you can also contact me on my personal email, and that's scoutfynn@gmail.com. But we will also, if you follow our social media pages, we will be sharing all of this information in the build up. And it's definitely something that's high on our priority list.
Thank you so much. You heard it from Scout herself. Now, please do follow Scout Fynn on Facebook and Instagram. And also, don't forget that it's going to be starting on the 16th of March. I think you said the 16th of March.
On the 6th of March to
6th
the
of March.
16th of March.
That's very
Yes,
pretty soon. So please get your
it
tickets
is.
ASAP. Thank you so much, Scott, for and such an amazing conversation, such an important conversation. Any last words?
Come and watch the show. I would love to, I think it's something that I have always really resonated with from the time I was young. It's building in this, this practice of going to watch theatre shows, particularly as a young person, but even now as somebody who's, in her 20s. I think it's a practice, we have such a deep history of theatre in this country, and I think it's a practice that we need to make use of more. So if you're looking for something to do over the weekends, or if you're looking for something to do with your friends, like, come through. It's going to be a really, really interesting and exciting performance, and we can't wait to welcome you.
Can't wait to welcome you. Thank you so much, Scout. It is a wonderful, another wonderful interview. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this channel. It was the morning catch up. Thank you so much, Scouts, and all the best for your production. We wish you nothing but the best, and we'll definitely find you on the stage. Seeing you will be in the front row. We have some people in Durban that will come to this production.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. Also, to you, the audience, we are nothing without you. So don't forget, next week, same time, same place. It's going to be the ASSITEJ South Africa, the morning catch up, only at 8 a.m. every Saturday. Ciao for now.